When it comes to NFL training camp, there are tons of storylines to follow, but which ones are the most tantalizing and the most exciting because of what they could potentially offer? We're going to talk about it in today's episode as it pertains to the Detroit Lions, so don't you go anywhere.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, as we all know, folks, training camp is right around the corner, and that means that we can finally stop dealing with this lack of news, this doldrum of what is known as the summer period, where there's nothing going on in regards to NFL football, or there's barely anything going on. It's one of the most difficult times of the year if you're a true sports fan, a true Lions fan anyway, because there's just nothing going on, and it's very hard to try and, get through these days when you've got nothing to talk about. But we podcasters, we try our best coming up with topics for you, and I've tried my best to maintain it. But now we can actually start talking about, hey, what are we going to have when we get into training camp? What is training camp actually going to be like? And hell, before you know it, once we get into training camp, we're not going to have to worry about that anymore because we're going to have so much news coming out of training camp, we can be talking about it for days. But until that time, that's why we're having this conversation that we're having right now. Because as training camp is about to come up, everybody's obviously wondering what is going to happen once we get to training camp. What are we going to see? What is the expectation for the team? What are we going to get out of some of these new players that we've picked up? Not just necessarily the rookies. So it's like, okay, there's a lot of tantalizing storylines to follow. There's a lot of stuff that is going to keep people's interest and is going to be good talking points. But again, for me, my question is which are the most interesting, or as my title states, which are the most tantalizing? For me, I have 5 different storylines that I think Lions fans are going to want to pay attention to because there's going to be a lot of stuff that we can, glean information from and try and get an understanding of where this team is going heading into 2024 because let's call it for what it is. 2024 is a big season for the Detroit Lions. This is a year where we could seriously win our first Super Bowl. And so for a lot of Lions fans, it's like, listen, every piece of information that we can get coming out of Allen Park, whether it's from practice reports, whether it's from the actual GM, Brad Holmes, or Dan Campbell themselves, that right there is something that we are going to desperately want as much as we can get. So let's take a look at it. What are my most tantalizing storylines to follow? I have 5 of them. Here's tantalizing storyline number 1. This is the one that I think a lot of people definitely need to pay attention to because we don't really have a true number 1 answer on it. Who is going to claim the wide receiver number 3 job? This is a question that nobody truly actually knows the answer for. Everybody knows who wide receiver number 1 and wide receiver number 2 are. It's going to be obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown at 1, and it's going to be obviously Jameson Williams at number 2. But number 3 is a true toss-up, and it's going to be a competition going into training camp, and obviously once the training camp period is done, to know who actually won the job. But for me, the 3 guys that are most likely vying for the job are these 3 guys. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones, you have Khalif Raymond, and you have Tre'Quan Smith. Tre'Quan Smith is a guy that a lot of people have kind of forgotten about. I've talked about him in the past, but it's like, listen, these are all guys that can vie for that number 3 job, and again, if they don't get the number 3 job, the other one could probably get the number 4 job. And possibly the number 5 job, because I truly expect that the Lions are probably going to run with about 6 or 7 wide receivers this year, depending upon numbers. So again, there's a good chance that all 3 of the guys I just mentioned make the roster as some other type of a wide receiver. But who makes the number 3 job? Because the number 3 wide receiver is most likely going to get just as many starting reps as other starters on the roster, but not necessarily as much as wide receiver 1 and 2. Now, for me, everybody's obviously going to ask the question, well, who do I think has the best chance of it? I'm going to be honest. In my honest opinion, I think the guy that has the best chance of doing it is probably going to be either Donovan Peoples-Jones or it's going to be Khalif Raymond. The reason why I say those 2 guys have the best chance of getting the wide receiver number 3 job is because of this. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a guy that, first and foremost, he was here last year. He's already had some time with Jared Goff. He already knows the offense. And on top of that, he's got the best overall body build to compete with the spot that was left vacant by Josh Reynolds. He has virtually the same size. He has virtually the same measurements in terms of speed, in terms of, explosiveness, blah, 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 blah. Plus, on top of that, out of all the guys that we have on the roster that are not, named Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, he has the most starting experience as far as in the NFL. So for me, it's like, hey, you have experience not only in terms of the roster, but also in terms of your time in the NFL as a starter. You have good production from your time in the past, plus you've already been here before. I think that gives Donovan Peoples-Jones the leg up in that category. But I would not count out Khalif Raymond. Khalif Raymond has been very, very steady for us over the last 2 years, usually getting about 600 yards a year and is a very good receiving option. But Khalif Raymond is kind of more like a slot kind of guy. You don't really throw him outside all that much. You can do both with Donovan Peoples-Jones. It's just really going to come down to how the Lions want to utilize the roster, the schematic view of whether or not they're going to use Donovan Peoples-Jones more of a hybrid player or if they're going to use more of Khalif Raymond being put inside. I don't know. But I do know this. It's a very tantalizing prospect because we truly don't know who's going to win that wide receiver 3 job. So that's storyline number 1. Storyline number 2, I'm going to say this right now. I've said it every year, and every year it has remained true because we usually don't know who gets this job until the very end. Who is going to be the kicker? I call it kicking battle royale, and this year it definitely fits that category because it's going to be a battle between Badgley and Bates. And honestly, I think it's probably the one battle in camp that is truly going to be a back and forth affair. Because the Lions, they brought in Bates from the UFL Michigan Panthers, right? And because of that, they specifically made room for him by cutting James Turner, who was the UDFA out of, the University of Michigan. So they already brought him in, and they already made a roster cut to bring in Jake Bates. Plus, like I've said in the past, Jake Bates is coming in with a 2-year contract. He's coming in with a lot of fanfare. He's coming in with a lot of popularity. And Badgley has not exactly had the strongest, endorsement, if you will, from the organization. Again, we picked him up in 2022. Then we kind of made space for him. We kind of moved off of him so that way we could have Riley Patterson. He went somewhere else, came back after we traded for Riley Patterson again. It's just what I'm saying is with Michael Badgley, he hasn't exactly had the most strongest of positions here as far as a roster spot is concerned. And now that Jake Bates is being brought in, he's got all this momentum coming with him from the UFL. I'm telling you, it's going to be an interesting situation to see how the Lions handle this. I don't know how they're going to handle it, but it's going to be fun trying to read who's winning the kicking battle day to day, every single day at training camp. Because I guarantee you this, guys like Tim Twentyman, Mike O'Hara, and a couple of others, they are definitely going to be paying attention to what is going on during training camp. They're going to want to see, okay, who's making the kicks, who's kicking wide left, wide right, who's able to push it further from outside of whatever range. That's going to be a thing that people are going to pay attention to. So that's storyline number 2 to follow. Storyline number 3, kind of moving back to the wide receiver question, but to a very, very, very specific one. The Goff, that sounds kind of weird. Goff and Jameson Williams chemistry. This one is kind of not nearly as tantalizing, but it has a tantalizing aspect to it. We already know that Jared Goff and Jameson Williams already have developed some chemistry. They've already been working together now for the last 2 years. So chemistry-wise, there is something there. The reason why I'm talking about this storyline is because of the fact that now that Jameson Williams is going to be a full-time starter, he's going to be number 2 opposite of Amon-Ra St. Brown's number 1, we really want to see going into training camp how those two really look when they actually are fully on the same page. Now that JMO is going to get a full-on shot to be that starting wide receiver. Are those guys making great plays in practice? Are they looking like they're in sync together? Are they able to get the deep ball going more often? These are all questions that I guarantee you people are going to be paying attention to. I fully expect that Jared Goff and Jameson Williams are going to do just fine, and I actually think they're probably going to surpass some people's expectations. But I guarantee you this, everybody's going to want to know, okay, now that JMO's number 2 in the wide receiver room, can Jared Goff and Jameson Williams be able to get that chemistry going at a much better production from what we've seen in the past, and I fully expect that they will. But I'm telling you, people are going to pay attention to that storyline. So that's storyline number 3. Storyline number 4. This is going to be one that definitely is going to get a lot of paying attention to, especially when we start having the joint practices. And this is what I call the real deal storyline. And I'm talking about the revamped secondary in terms of how they perform when they start going up against our wide receivers. They start going up against the joint practice wide receivers of other teams like the Giants and other guys. We want to see how this squad actually looks like when they put the pads on, when they can actually start getting physical, when they can actually start providing good, solid man and zone coverage, because that's going to be the true measuring stick. That's going to be the true litmus test, if you will, to let us know, okay, has the secondary actually really improved? Is the revamped secondary ready to help the Lions actually make a Super Bowl run? We already know that PFF is viewing the Lions secondary with a lot of, fanfare. Because think about it. PFF just released their secondary rankings, and the Lions came in ranked at 11th. And that's with virtually an entirely brand new secondary. Because let's think about it. Terry and Arnold, we just drafted him. Enos Rakestraw, we just drafted him. Carlton Davis, we just traded for him. Amik Robertson, we just signed him. All the guys that we've got that are primarily our starters, they are brand spanking new to this secondary. So it's like, we need to see how these guys, first and foremost, are able to work together on the field. Do they have the ability to communicate? Do they have the ability to pick up assignments on the front end, the back end? Make sure that nobody's getting lost in coverage. These are all things to pay attention to. But also, can they be able to match up against the wide receivers, providing said sound coverage and potentially become more of an what's the word I'm looking for here? More of a bonus, if you will, to get those turnovers, such as interceptions, such as getting those coverage sacks. These are all things that people are going to want to pay attention to when it comes time for training camp. And now we get to storyline number 5. This one, I can guarantee you, a lot of people are very interested in. I'm telling you, I know that they are. And that is, who is going to emerge as Hutch's help on the opposite end of the edge rushing position? We already know Aiden Hutchinson has got his side of the line locked down solid and tight. It's not going anywhere. But nobody knows who the hell is going to be the primary starter opposite of him on the right side of the defense. We don't know. We've got 3 guys that are in a contention race right now for that job. Marcus Davenport, we have Matthew Betts, and we have James Houston. Every one of these guys is coming into this situation, and they've all got a reason as to why they want the job. They've all got motivation as to why they want to win the job. For Davenport, it's kind of like his last chance to show that he can still play at an NFL level. For Betts, it's to show that, hey, what he did in the CFL was no fluke, and now he has the ability to kind of have a Cameron Wake-style career in the NFL, starting with the Detroit Lions. And for James Houston, it's to show that, hey, the injury he sustained last year that knocked him out for the majority of the year is not going to set him back. He can still play. He can still be a dominant threat off of the edge. And every single one of these guys is all going to be vying for that job. Now, who gets the job? In my honest opinion, as I've said in the past, the guy that I think has the best chance to win the job is Matthew Betts. He's got the most momentum out of all the guys coming in. Plus, on top of that, Matthew Betts is already being reported to have a very good, OTA and minicamp. So I'm expecting that when the training camp period comes along, he should be able to follow right in for that. We really haven't heard a whole lot out of Marcus Davenport or James Houston as far as what they've been doing in training camp. But Betts, we have been hearing stuff about. We've been hearing about how, hey, he's got a fire coming off the edge. He's always coming in hot. And on top of that, we're hearing that he's doing very well and starting to learn how to be a pass coverage kind of dude, dropping in his sets, being able to provide that zone coverage or man coverage, whatever the case might be. That's why I think Betts is probably the guy that's got the best opportunity to do it. Now, I'm not saying that Davenport and Houston are already on the outs. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I'm just simply saying this. If you realistically want to take a look at this question, if you realistically want to figure out who's going to win this job, you need to pay attention to what's being, brought up coming out of practices. And right now, at least in that regard, Betts is in the running. Betts is actually the forerunner. The question is, what can Davenport and Houston do? And hopefully for Davenport, he doesn't get injured in training camp and instantly knocks himself out of the freaking, race just to begin with. But those right there are my 5 top storylines. Now, that's not to say there aren't other storylines, but those are the ones that I think are the most interesting. Those are the ones that I think a lot of Lions fans want the answers to the most. There's obviously, like I said, other ones. But these are the ones that I think Lions fans desperately want answers to. They desperately are going to be following after to try and get as much news about them as possible. But having said that, I think I've come to the end of this episode. So for that, I'm going to say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. I also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and you not had a chance to do so, again, I highly encourage y'all to subscribe. But I also want to encourage y'all, please, to make sure you hit that bell notification icon that's at the bottom of the page, so that way you guys never again miss any of the content that I'm pushing out. We want to make sure you guys are coming back to the channel as much as possible, and the best way to do that is to make sure that bell notification icon is on. I also encourage y'all to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel has a reach, the greater the channel can spread, which allows the channel to grow even better. And with that being said, to everybody, I hope you all enjoyed the content. I hope everybody out there has got a reason that makes them happy, makes them smile. And with that, folks, I just want to say God bless, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.